So take away the idea of God being a person. He is no person, he is will. That's why inshallah, God wills, God wills, God wills. It's over and over, God wills. It's not this idea of the, it's almost pantheistic in some aspects. In religion, because women are unclean during their monthly time, and so during that time they can't pray. They're just unclean, just like a pig or a dog or anything else. So men are superior in religion. Men are superior in Thanksgiving because they're glad they're men, and as a witness. According to Islam, it takes the witness of 2 women to equal that of 1 man. Now, let's say you go to an Islamic court and you got 2 women and 1 man. Who wins? The man does, because the court's going to acknowledge that the men are superior. However, in order to win, it really takes 3 women to win to equal or to overcome that of 1 man. Are you following me on this? Okay. Now here's something else. It takes the witness of 2 Christians to equal that of 1 Muslim. So, in order for Christian women to go up against a Muslim in a Muslim court, you have to have 4 women to equal that of 1 Muslim man. So, in order to overcome, you have to have 5 Christian women who all agree 100% in everything they say to go against the 1 Muslim man. Are you seeing that? So, men are superior as a witness. In upkeep. Now, what that means is that basically men have to pay for women. They have to pay for a house and to give them food and give them clothing, and just to keep a woman, it costs money, men money. So the men therefore are superior. I'll just leave it at that. A good wife then is obedient and guards her unseen parts. What are her unseen parts? Glad you asked. It could be a couple of different things. It could refer to the fact that she properly wears a hijab, which covers her hair, or a burqa, which covers her face, or a veil that covers her face, depending on the nationality of the people. But it could also refer to the home. A lot of Muslim homes have a place for visitors, and then a separate place for the families where the women are. And so she guards those unseen places that don't allow visitors or men who are not related to her to pass. So she keeps that house. Could be her unseen parts. It's not really clear what it is. A bad wife, though, is admonished, forsaken sexually, and beaten. Now there are modern translations in English of the Quran which included the word lightly in the beat, says beaten lightly. It's not actually there in the Arabic, it's just beaten, but it's trying to make it more palatable to a Western mindset. There's an Arabic kind of fable or a parable that's kind of told to all the Muslim children in the Middle East. And the story goes like this. Now, in Arabic, it's one of those languages where everything is either male or female. Everything exists in terms of male and female. So a boy and his grandfather are walking down the street. And the boy says to the grandfather, "Look at this field of wheat." And the grandfather says, "Yes, isn't she beautiful?" And the boy says, "Yes, but look how it's all bowed down. All the wheat's bowed down." And he goes, and the grandfather says, "Yes, because her head is full." And the boy says, "But the one stalk, look, it's standing straight up." And the grandfather says to the boy, "Yes, because her head is empty." Do you get the implications here? In order to have a woman who understands her place, who knows where she belongs, who fits perfectly, she has to be bowed down to the man. She has to know her place. I was talking to a guy. He was a taxi driver, and he had a brother who lived in Tampa, and he was asking me. His brother was asking him to move to the States, and he was debating on whether he should move to the States permanently. And he said to me, he says, "Is it true that you can't beat your children here?" And I said to him, I said, "Well, what do you mean?" He said, "Well, I have a 15-year-old daughter, and I come home from work, and I beat her every day." And I said, "Yes, that's illegal." He goes, "I am not going to move to the United States." Now, in his mind, listen, from his perspective, he is being a good father. He's not doing it out of malice. He's not doing it out of anger. He comes home from work and beats his daughter regularly so that she knows her place in the home. Are you seeing how that works? Guys are looking at me like a deer in headlights. Don't know which guys are thinking. So anyway, there's this idea of women being totally subservient to men. I have actually been in taxis where I've seen taxi drivers aim for women in the streets. If a woman's white cross, they'll aim for them. They'll put on and they're like, and I'm like, "What are you doing?" And they're like, "She's a woman. She's supposed to be in the home. She's not supposed to be outside." And so consequently, in a lot of Muslim cultures, the men do the shopping. The men go to the store, the men pick up the shopping, they do the grocery shopping, they do anything that you need. Women are supposed to be in the home. No, women
now,
could.
is that Islamic and cultural?
It is. It's both. They don't distinguish a lot of times between culture and Islam. It's all the same as far as they're concerned. They do things because they're Muslim. So
Arabs will do that, and so would Somali.
Yeah, but perhaps not an American, because there is culture that enters in. You know, it's one of those weird things. But what about a Somali that moves here and doesn't know better? You know,
that's where the international learning center.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I said the guy was like, "Is that true?" I mean, he just couldn't believe that. You mean you can't beat your daughter? You know, what kind of father would I be? You know, that's what his thinking was.
So he was beating her not because she did anything.
Not because she did anything, but because, you know, he was trying to teach her. He was trying to be a good father to her.
Well, and that goes back to Hebrews 12:11, where it says that discipline is the time that will be pleasant or rather unpleasant, but when we are fully trained by it, it'll be a peaceful fruit of righteousness. So the whole idea that God disciplines us, but it is unpleasant for us, it's still for our own good. They just corrupt that.
Yeah, sure, it's corrupted. So, mothers. Let's talk about mothers. Mothers gain respect with the birth of children. We talked about that. They get the identity of their children. As a matter of fact, their names will be identified with their children. We have a son. His name is Kieran. It's an Irish Indian name. So if you're an Irish Indian, as my son is, we took the Irish spelling and the Indian spelling and combined them, and we came up with Kieran. And so anyway, Usha is now Kieran, Kieran's mom. That's who she is. I'm Abu Kieran, Kieran's father. I'm identified with my son. I'm a man. Beard doesn't count. Okay. So anyway, they gain respect with children. Up until the point they have children, there's really not a whole lot of respect. Let's see, where am I going at? Where am I at? They gain authority as their sons marry. Yeah, as adult sons marry, they gain authority.
Gain authority.
Yeah, let me explain. Okay, yeah.
Over the daughter.
A wife can get a lot of power.
Really?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Remember, it's an indirect culture. How do you get a wife to have power and authority? You have children. So where do you get the power of? You get your children to get what you want from your husband. See how that works? It's now they know the rules, and so consequently, women can become very manipulative. So. So as the adult children then marry, especially the men, then the men bring their wives not into necessarily the home, but into that neighborhood. And if they own the land, then maybe they might build another home on the land, or if they say that there's never a building that's finished in the Middle East, because they just build another level on top for the children that's going to move in on top of their home, and so they just build another. But the mother then has complete authority over the son's wife.
Yeah.
She rules. Yeah, there's not the leave and cleave thing happening. Okay, it's not happening here. Yeah, so she rules. So what the mother-in-law says that wife does because the mother-in-law will beat her otherwise. She rules.
What does the husband, her son, have to say about it?
It's his mom. It's not the leave and cleave thing. So as I'm saying, she gains. You see, she becomes a very powerful part of the household. You see, she's got that manipulative thing going. She's got power over the son and over the daughter-in-law. She's queen bee. You see, but it takes a lot of time to get there. Because eventually she's going to die off, and the son's wife then is going to eventually be queen bee. See how that works? And of course, she directs her husband by manipulation. Now, single women are subject to the mother and the brother, or excuse me, the father and the brothers. A single woman is never to be left alone, ever. A single woman is never to be left alone. If she's left alone, she's doing something she's not supposed to be doing. So, this affects, if you could imagine, how they go to school, how they commute to work, because if they're not married, you see, they're under the subject of the brothers and the. We knew an Indian woman, and she wasn't Muslim; she was just Indian, and she was. How old was she? She had, who we sent to England? Dorothy, yeah. She was in her 40s. And she wanted to go to Bible school. Well, she wasn't going to go back to India because then she'd be subject to her brothers, and her brothers wouldn't let her go to Bible school. At 40, because she wasn't married. You see, you're always supervised. Always supervised. So, anyway, slavery does happen a lot still. It's still, we hear a lot about it, about, what do they call it? Human trafficking. That's just a nice way to say slavery. It goes on all the time. My favorite Mexican restaurant in Jacksonville, Florida, was raided because they were bringing in people to work the restaurant and refusing to pay, and said if you didn't do anything, if you complained, we'd just have you arrested. And so. They eventually got busted for human trafficking, and as you could imagine, business dried up and the restaurant closed. And I'm sad and yet happy at the same time. I don't know how to feel about that. Anyway, the Quran says, if you fear that you cannot treat orphans, and by that girls, with fairness, then you may marry other women who seem good to you, 2, 3, 4 of them. But if you fear that you cannot maintain equality among them, marry one only, and any slave girls you may own. This will make it easier for you to avoid injustice. What that means is literally, it's not marry as in the terms of, a marriage covenant. What they're talking about is sexual conduct. It's talking about sexuality. Basically, have sex with as many slaves as you want. They become concubines. This is considered keeping morality in the home. If you could imagine, in the Middle East, there are a lot of maids that come in from Sri Lanka, from the Philippines, a lot that come in now from former Soviet nations. They're coming in. And in order to get a job, what happens is there's a broker that will go to say the Philippines and say, look, you give me $10,000, I get you a job. Family pays up $10,000. They send in somebody over who thinks they're going to work in a household, and so they get there, and that family also has paid the broker $10,000 for the privilege of getting this new. Now this person is in the home. They are subject then to the whims of the family that, as far as they're concerned, just paid for this person. And so if the family then, the men of the family, or the sons, depending on their age or whatever, if they have sexual intercourse with the woman, as far as they're concerned, she's a slave, and it's keeping morality in the home because they're not taking their sexual urges outside the home where it can be seen. I know that's shocking. Now, let me say something about Islam. Islam is what they call an honor-based culture. Honor is what I would describe as a veneer. For example, we've got these nice tables here, and there's this nice-looking wood veneer, and it looks really nice, but underneath it's particle board. Okay? Well, in Islam, everybody there in Islam, remember I say they know the rules. Now, the rules are that there's this honor that covers everything. Now, they know what lies underneath that honor is a lot of debauchery, a lot of, you know, I told you about all the nice things that they do about giving to the poor and all these kind of things. But the reality is they know it's rotten to the core. The reality is they know there's sexual deviancy and murder and all these things. All these things are underneath that. But it covers everything up with this veneer of honor, and as long as it looks right and proper, it's right and proper. It's when you break through that veneer that they get all upset and something happens. Okay?
And that's usually when a woman...
Right, and it's usually a woman's fault.
Yeah.
Right. Now, here's the thing. They understand, according to their rules, they understand the veneer. Okay. Now they come here. In that veneer of honor, everything is purported to prove how great Islam is. So you have news broadcasts, you have television shows, you have every kind of conceivable thing, and everything's there to prove how great and how perfect Islam is. They come here to a Christian nation, and they then expect that Hollywood, television shows, media broadcasts, everything on TV is there to show how great and how perfect and wonderful Christianity is. That's the honor that they see. What they want to know is what's underneath it. If what we show on TV are gay rights marches, if we show sexual immorality, if we show murder and we show mayhem, and this is normal fare for TV, what lies underneath our veneer of honor? How evil is our society really if we're showing the best of the best to the world? You see what I'm saying? It blows their mind. They can't even imagine how evil it is. Because according to their rules, they know what is evil, but they have a veneer that keeps it all nice and clean. Am I making sense? So that's kind of what this system is. When you're talking about slavery, it goes on, but the idea is you keep it all nice and clean and in the home where it's not seen.
At least we can give them credit for having a veneer. We don't even have a veneer in this country.
So there's been a number of cases where Saudis have come to the States and brought their maids with them, and then they get arrested for slave trafficking because they're not paying their maids and they're not letting them out of the homes. And so it's happened in a number of cases, and it's going to increase. because it's such a common practice. Such a common practice. And if you could imagine, it affects modern employee-employer relationships. Remember, I told you women, especially single women, should be watched at all times. What about work? How do they work? What you got workplaces where there's men and women together, in a modern situation. How does that work? Well, the way it works a lot of times is what they'll do is the women will get a job outside of the country or outside of their family's viewing area where the veneer is maintained. You see, because you can't break that veneer, and if everybody knows that, and there are rules. For example, there was a Jordanian woman who got a job as a secretary, but she couldn't, as a secretary, she couldn't bring in coffee or tea because that's something that a slave would do. So even though she was a secretary, so they would hire an Egyptian who would also come in and would be willing to do that, but the Egyptian would never do that back in Egypt, but would do it in Jordan, because the veneer is maintained. See. Modern women, then, can be educated. They're part of the workforce, and they're also chaperoned. And again, probably more than even the men, there's that tension between the modern and the tradition. You could see they would be probably trying to figure out where they fit on that line of orthodoxy, probably more than anybody. An Islamic worldview, and I'm going to switch gears here because we got a lot in this session. Islamic worldview. Christians and Jews are known as people of the book. Whoa, what happened? Oh. Pushed the wrong button. Then look what happens. Let that just keep going there for a second. I'll catch up. However, they're kind of looked at in a sense of honor, but yet they're not. They still think that Christians are idolatrous. Is that done? Are we moving on here? Here we go. Let's keep going there. And so even though we're called the people of the book, we're supposed to be a people of honor. The reality is that there's no real friendship between Christians and Islam in that sort of sense. Let me catch us back up here. There's also all right. I went too far. There you go. East versus West kind of mentality. That there's this idea that the West wants to destroy them, and so they want to kind of get us before we get them. That's still very prevalent. There's the idea of government versus the people. That their own government, they don't trust their own governments. Oftentimes, I will talk to a Muslim and I'll say something like, we'll be talking and find out, really we got a lot in common, we could be friends, and we're like, the reality is we all want peace, don't we? And, yeah, we all want peace. For the most part, most Muslims want to raise a family, they want to have a good life, they want their children to be better off than they were. But for the most part, that's true. And so you go, yeah, but governments. And they go, oh, yeah, governments. They cause the problems. You don't mention their government specifically, but governments. Oh, yeah, governments. Yeah, that's the problem. But because a lot of times they feel disempowered, there are conspiracy theories about everything. I'll tell you what, if there's not a good rainfall and they need some rain, then it's the Mossad's fault or the CIA's fault. There is somebody to blame about everything that happens.
That's probably true.
I was actually told that underneath the American embassy that there's a full runway with bombers ready to fly out from underneath the embassy at a moment's notice. And you'd think, okay, these are uneducated people no, these are educated people, and they really do believe that. And you tell them that it can't possibly happen. You know how much space that would take? No, it's true. Because there's a conspiracy theory about everything, because they just have no power to change anything. But bottom line is, every Muslim believes that Islam will prevail and take over the world. They believe that.
And the Bible tells us the same thing.
What, that Islam will prevail and take over the world?
The world we're living.
All right. So now we're going to page 15, being an effective witness. I got 10 points here, which I'm going to go through really quickly. All right. Number 1, be love motivated. I know I've talked about that a little bit. For God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son. You know, they're of the world. They're not Christians. Don't expect them to act like Christians. But we've got to love them anyway. We've got to love them. And that can possibly be one of the hardest things that we ever do. We have a tendency, especially in the American culture, to say what we want and when we want it and how we want it. And that's my opinion, and you're more than welcome to be entitled to it. And that's not going to necessarily show love. And I'll tell you something, the American military is not over there in the Middle East trying to show love. It's not their point. It's not their purpose. So it's going to take individuals who's going to go out and share the love of Jesus Christ. It's the only way it's going to happen. Number 1, be love motivated. Number 2, don't compete in religion. What do you mean by that? Well, us Christians, we pray. Oh yeah, well, us Muslims pray 5 times a day. Oh yeah, well, us Christians, we're conservative. Oh yeah, well, have you ever worn a swimsuit? Us Christians, we're, whatever it is, don't get into a push and pull match. Who's better religion? Because it's not about religion anyway. It's about Jesus Christ. So let's keep the focus on Jesus, which gives us to point number 3. Be Jesus focused. It's all about Jesus. Okay. Remember, who can tell me, what do you think about Muhammad?
I'm a Christian.
I'm a follower of Jesus.
Muhammad. Let's talk about
Don't even mention Muhammad.
I'm a Christian. I follow Jesus.
I follow Jesus. Let's talk about him. There we go. So you remember, I'm a Christian. I follow Jesus. So be Jesus focused. Always be bringing it back to Jesus, because He's the only one that's going to save them anyway. And you know what? In what we're talking about, listen first, talk last. Be willing to ask questions about their religion. That's okay. And I hope none of you are thinking about converting. But let them talk. Let them talk. If you get them talking, there's an order of politeness. It says if you talk, or if you allow someone to talk, then the other person has a right to talk as well. But if you talk first, you have to allow them to talk. For any history buffs here, you got to remember the speech, give me liberty or give me death. Well, we all remember the statement, give me liberty or give me death. Do you know that was the very last speech made in an all-day list of speeches that were made that day? And every other speech was about keeping with the crown and not having a revolution against Britain. And yet everybody remembers give me liberty or give me death because it was the very last speech made. The very last. What is said last oftentimes has the greatest impact. So speak last.
Man,
Yes.
I had an opportunity to be with a group of people that ended up in the office of an imam at his invitation. And there were 7 men in this room. None of us knew how to speak but one guy. So this guy was speaking in the language of these Indians. And he told us what his religion was all about. Listen, We had chai. We just had a good time. And then he said, and so Dale says, okay, now let us tell you what we believe. And he had an audience of 7 people who were as quiet as they could be, and they heard all about Jesus and what he has done for Christ. And that was the last speech for that day.
Awesome.
It was beautiful.
That is
How
awesome.
God could arrange that.
That's good. Number 4, never use Judgment Day as an argument. You know, when we talk, sometimes it has been said that people say things like, well, we'll see on Judgment Day. Listen, when it's Judgment Day, it's too late. When we use Judgment Day as an argument, that means we've run out of things to say, first of all. Second of all, it means that we hope to see them in hell. And again, I don't want to see anybody in hell. So let's stay away from Judgment Day. We know for a fact that right now they're destined for hell. We know that. What we want to do is avoid that from happening. Okay? So we want to keep the communication lines open. We don't want to just end it. Okay? Number 5, dress conservatively. Kim talked about this a little bit yesterday, but I'm going to talk about it again today. First of all, I'm going to talk about men because men are oftentimes easier. Number 1 for men, don't wear shorts unless you're playing football. And by football, I mean soccer. Okay? Unless you're on the World Cup or doing something kind of crazy like that. Long trousers. Wear shirts with a collar. And that's okay because you can't take a kid serious anyway. Because they're kids, right? But men wear shirts with a collar because it shows respect. If you have a tattoo, and I know we're getting more and more, I don't know if any of you do, I don't see any. But if you do wear tattoos, if you have tattoos, sport tattoos, it's becoming a tattoo culture, and you see them everywhere nowadays, even in churches. Hide them. Because if you wear a tattoo, you're a member of a gang and you've killed somebody. They've seen the movies, they know. Okay? So stay away from just cover your tats. I'm just saying. And then finally, no bling. If you wear jewelry, you're gay. Now they understand wedding rings and they understand watches because watches have a price, but no earrings, no necklaces, no nothing, because I don't care how much you try to convince them otherwise. If you wear jewelry and you're a man, you're gay. Okay? That's just the way it is. On the other hand, for women, wear as much jewelry as you possibly can. Because, especially gold, because gold means that you are loved. And you're loved and supported by your husband or your parents or whatever. When our daughter was born, she was born in Jordan, we brought her home, and our landlord met us at the door with gold earrings. Wow. And then we didn't pierce our daughter's ears. And we had people ask us if we loved our daughter or if we wished she was a boy. Oh. Because if they love their daughters, and yes, men do love their daughters, okay? Even in the Arab world, they do love their daughters. They'll pierce their ears and put gold in it right away to show that they love them. Okay? So gold is important. As much gold as you possibly can. Okay? I know that sounds kind of weird to us, but it's funny when Usha would have gold, and because Usha's Indian, of course she has gold. I had missionaries who would complain about the fact that Usha had gold, but yet when it came to an event and they wanted to be proven that they were loved for and cared for, they would come over and borrow Usha's gold. I always found that funny. Okay, women. Okay, going on. When I was a kid, now let me say, when I was a kid, we used to have, you probably know this because you knew wash tub preachers, clothesline preaching. You know clothesline? Okay, you know what I'm talking about. Used to be a time where a lot of preachers would talk about the way women would dress. And we stopped doing that altogether, and we kind of, in the process of doing that, have thrown out modesty in that process. And so I don't want to get back to clothesline preaching because it was ridiculous, but there are some principles of modesty that I think would be helpful, especially dealing with Muslims. Number one, women wear sleeves. I don't care what kind of, how long or whatever. You know, with Kim, she's got her rules for what happens in ILC, but we're not always in ILC. We're not always there. But when you're talking with Muslims, at least wear sleeves. Nothing is more embarrassing than I've been in churches and have had to look away because you can see up a woman's sleeve and in through her bra and out the other side, and you're thinking, oh my gosh, Lord help me. And so wear sleeves, just as a matter of modesty, and wear something that covers the knees. You know, and here's what I'll tell you to do. What woman here doesn't have some sort of full-length mirror? Anybody? Almost all women have a full-length mirror. Get in front of a mirror. I'm sorry. But get in front of a mirror and sit down. Sit. And check to make sure that it still goes past the knees. Okay? After you sit down. Another thing. Stand in front of the mirror. Stand up nice, straight, and tall like a soldier. Like this. Go like this. Go like this. Quickly drop your hand and see if the shirt bounces back. If the shirt bounces back, it's too tight. Okay, enough said on that one.
Now, who created this system?
Because of okay, let me explain. I'll go on from there. Let me explain this whole system. Have something that fits loosely. Let me finish with women, and then I'll explain why. Have something that fits loosely so that it covers your backside. You know, whether it's just a shirt that's kind of tucked out, but it covers your backside or whatever. And I'm going to leave it at that. That's all I'm going to say about women. Now, why do I say that? Because they see TV, they see what's on, and they believe that every American woman is free to be touched, to be fondled, to be because they want it. They want to jump into Saks, left, right, and center. All you got to do is say, "Hey, babe," and she's ready. They really believe that. They believe that the American women are the most promiscuous people in the whole world because we're showing the best of the best on TV. Okay? So what we're trying to say is, I'm not touchable. Don't touch me. Okay? And so in order to do that, if you're strutting your stuff, they're going to think, hey, you're advertising because it's free for the touch. As a rule of thumb, never show any part of your body that you're not willing someone to touch. So if you like cleavage to be shown, expect that that's free to touch. Okay? I'll leave it at that. That's all I want to say about conservative. Is that okay? Am I Kim? Okay. There it is. That's what I'm talking about. Okay, moving on. Always refer to the Bible.
Yeah.
Okay, here's what I'd like you to do. I would like you to go and buy the cheapest Bible you possibly can, and maybe even a stack of them. Nothing with any notes, no commentaries, no nothing. The cheapest Bible, and I'm not even going to say what version it is, but I'll tell you what version not to get. Do not get an NIV. Why? Glad you asked. Because in the NIV it says things like, the following verses are not contained in the earliest manuscripts. Right. And then they'll go, aha, see, your own Bible says that it's been altered and changed. It proves the fact that, the Quran must be correct and the Bible must be not. Okay. So stay away from the NIV. Other than that, you want to go New King James, you want to go New American Standard, whatever you want to. That's I don't want to go into that debate, but just stay away from the NIV. And cheap because you want to be able to give it away. When you're talking to a Muslim and you're showing them something, remember we said, "Let me show you about him." Open up your Bible. Here. Now, here's the cool thing about that. Here's the cool thing. In order to read the Quran, you have to do your ceremonial cleansing. Okay? You, as a Christian, are unclean. What they think is that we think they're unclean. Now what you're doing is you're handing them your Word of God. And you're saying, here, you take it and you read it. You mean I'm accepted? Do you see the power in that? You trust me with your Word? Then you let them read it for themselves, and then you say, you can keep it. There's a principle of sales. There's a principle of sales, which what you want someone to do is you want them to own it before they buy it. For example, come in here, this is a house. Come in here, I'm a salesman, I'm trying to sell you this house, and I'll do it like this. Where would you put your couch in this house? In this living room, where would you put the couch? What kind of curtains would you hang up in the windows over here? You see, I am asking you to imagine your furniture inside here. I'm actually asking you to decorate even before, so you've already bought it in your mind before you bought it with your checkbook. Are you seeing that? By giving the Bible, you're giving them ownership before they have ownership. This is something of great wealth, great value, and you're giving it to them.
But if they think that you're unclean and you're handing them this Bible,
but you got it from their perspective, they're thinking you think they're unclean. Because what people look at other people through their own lens. If I think you're unclean, you must think I'm unclean. If I think you're this, then you must think I'm that. You see what I'm saying? That's how people judge other people all the time. Next, know what you believe. And I'm not talking about just kind of theology here. And of course, we all have to know theology. But I want you to kind of dig deeper. I have taught this as a college course before, and I've never gotten a satisfactory answer on this. I've actually asked people to write a report on what they believe. And what I'm not asking for is Bible verse. What I'm asking for is how do you live your life to support what you say you believe? Because if your life doesn't match up with what you say you believe, then I don't think you really believe it. I hope that makes sense. So I'm asking you to really internalize this and figure out what you really believe. Okay? Number 8, have a personal testimony ready. That's probably the easiest one because nobody can deny what you say God did for you. God did this for me, and I did this. You know, you can call him a liar, but God did this for me. God did it for me. No one else did. God did this for me. Man, that holds a lot of power, a lot of weight. Number 9, never justify a Muslim's faith. Yes?
I have a question about personal testimony.
Sure.
How do Muslims feel about miracles?
A lot of they believe in miracles.
Mm-hmm.
Sure they do. They have even exorcists and all kinds of stuff in the Islamic faith. Yeah. Sure, they believe in miracles.
The vast majority of Iranians that I know have come to faith had a vision.
Mm-hmm.
God speaks to that whole nation through dreams and visions.
Yep, that's true.
Because it's very much part of their culture.
Kim's got a movie that has kind of put that
You're
in.
in the podium now.
Is it? Oh, yeah, right here. More Than Dreams. Recommend it. It's really good. I watched it before. It talks about how various people from around the world have had dreams and visions of Jesus and have come to know him through dreams. I do know of a couple of YWAM missionaries that have in Indonesia that have gone from village to village and just asked who's had a vision of Jesus. And they said inevitably somebody in every village has had a dream or a vision of Jesus. So it's more common than what we care to think. So, yeah, good point. Anyway, number 9. Never justify.
A little bit on never justify.
With the chicken.
Yeah. Why a chicken? What is all that about? There used to be this thing about and I'm showing my age here, okay, in this. But there used to be this thing about pride and a crow, and a cock, strutting stuff. And so
another Mountain Dew.
I actually, to give you a good my background, I actually got saved at a tent revival meeting. And so,
Making all the Baptist nervous. Be careful, brother.
but I'll tell you what, my African American Baptist friends, they know how to do it. Can somebody say glory? Where's my hanky? Let's get it flying. Come on.
With Baptist costumes.
It's, to each his own. But anyway, I got saved in one of those old tent revival meetings back in the day. So,
Justifying the Muslim faith.
justify the Muslim faith. I see this a lot on TV nowadays because I don't know why exactly. Someone said it's because of the pendulum, 9/11, and the pendulum has swung back, and we've almost apologized to our Muslim friends for 9/11 happening. And it's kind of weird. And I see quite often things on TV that though it doesn't really say that Islam's correct or whatever, but yet will somehow make it so that it justifies a Muslim's faith. And I think I told you about this story yesterday, I think, about my friend who I was talking to about well, maybe I didn't. I don't know. I'm going to tell it again. If you tell me to stop, I'll stop. But a friend of mine was asking me about, had you ever read the Quran? And I said, yes. And he said, well, what do you think about it? And I said to him, well, to be honest, it's a lie. Now, I don't recommend you doing that. Okay, I don't know what in the world got into me, but I did. I said it was a lie. And
Are you still friends?
I haven't seen him in years. But anyway, his eyes, you can imagine, his eyes got about that big around. It's like someone slapped him in the face. He goes, well, what do you mean? And I said to him, look, I've studied Arabic for years. And I do not know Arabic well enough to read the Quran and know what it means. Is the Quran God's word? Oh yes, he'd say yes, God, it's God's word. Then God wants everybody in the world to know what's in His word. Is that right? Oh yes, God wants everybody to know. I've studied Arabic for years, and yet I can't read it well enough to know what's in it. So God doesn't want it for me. So it must be a lie. And he said to me, nobody has ever said that. What they say is things like, well, it's good enough for you. And they go, that's right, good enough for me. Well, that's your faith. You're right, it's my faith. Never give an opportunity to justify a Muslim's faith. Don't make him go away thinking, you're right. You're right. Even you know it's my faith. Even you know it's good enough for me. Never let that happen. Because we're not there to try to justify their faith. We're not there to try to make them feel good about their faith. Let's make them feel good about the relationship, but never make them feel good about their faith. Okay?
Well, whenever I'm discussing with Jewish people, and of course we're going to have fundamental disagreement on who the Messiah is, but I say ultimately we're both after the same thing. We want truth. And the only question is, what is it? And then we can, at least if we start at the commonality there, we can then begin to progress. Okay, so let's look at the passage in the Quran that says, the sun sets in the swamp west. I think we can scientifically disprove that.
Now you bring up a point about the Quran, going through the Quran, and I'm oftentimes asked when I teach this, do you ever go through the Quran and open up the Quran? And again, I'm going to go back to this principle of never justifying a Muslim's faith. I avoid the Quran with trying. I know some Christians who have done great work, and so I'm not discrediting what they've done. Never would I do that. A lot of people have been led to the Lord through the Quran. I know that's happened. But you got to really know what you're doing. Okay? And so to avoid a mistake and them going away thinking, see, I've proved my point, and them feeling like they've got the upper hand, I don't do that. So, you know, if you're skilled in that, go to it, brother. But I don't want to take that chance.
But if we start off with the premise that we're both seeking the same thing, which is truth.
That is true. And I've done that before. I'm sorry, I've gone over my time.
I think if you're a Muslim that has become a believer, I think it's safe for people who used to be Muslim to say, look, I know that I read this in the Quran and this is what led me to do this. As a Christian, I don't know the Quran well enough, though I can use certain things that they believe.
That last point, don't compartmentalize faith, means keep everything that you do Christian. I'm sorry, how?
Mike. Yes. Great job, Matt.
Let's
Great job. Thank you very much. And there's some food back there. Take a bottle of water with you. And
Yeah. Thank you. You know what was beautiful about this today is the North American Mission Board, the Baptist Convention of New York. I know the association front here. Thank you. I was thinking Finger Lakes. I was just there. Finger Lakes Association. Everyone came together to make this event possible. And but it was really spurred on by local pastors saying we need to really think about how we're going to reach people here in Buffalo. I hope there'll be continuing conversations that take place. I hope as you guys think together, not only even on an individual level,